I'm Ezrah Raya, reporting on the hottest issues and the biggest stories. This is the Manila Times. The Philippines has filed a new diplomatic protest against China after yet another water cannon incident during a resupply mission to BRP Sierra Madre at Ayungin Shoal. Several countries have expressed their support for the Philippines, calling out China's latest dangerous and aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. Senator Cheese Escudero has pushed for the establishment of a permanent structure in Ayungin Shoal, assuring that the Senate will be dedicating an initial 100 million pesos from the 2024 national budget to build new floating facilities at the Ayungin Shoal and Kalayaan Island. What are the implications of such structure at the disputed waters? Here with us today is former Supreme Court Justice and a staunch defender of the West Philippine Sea, Senior Justice Antonio Carpio. Welcome to the Manila Times, sir. Justice, the government is now eyeing on putting up permanent structure at Ayungin Shoal to replace the fast deteriorating vessel, that is BRP Sierra Madre, to assert our claims in the West Philippine Sea. So tell us, what are the possible implications of this structure, sir?
Well, first of all, Ayungin Shoal, excuse me, as the arbitral award stated, Ayungin Shoal is part of our exclusive economic zone because Ayungin Shoal is low tide elevation beyond the territorial sea of any island above water tide. So it's clearly part of our EEZ. Now, under Articles 56 and 60 of UNCLOS, only the Philippines has the exclusive right to put up structures in our EEZ for the purpose of conserving and managing the natural resources and for protecting and preserving the marine environment. So we can actually put up a structure there, like a marine research center or with a lighthouse, together with a lighthouse. But I prefer that we put up a civilian structure to be operated by the Coast Guard, because in the arbitral award, the tribunal said if it's a military activity, if it's a Navy or AFP installation, that is not under the jurisdiction of the arbitral tribunal. We cannot go to the arbitral tribunal if China intimidates us or destroys this structure or harasses our people there. So we should have a civilian structure under the Coast Guard, because Coast Guard is a civilian entity. So I am in favor of putting up a structure there for the purpose of protecting and preserving the marine environment. Because remember, the Chinese have been destroying the coral reefs. They destroyed the coral reef in Sabina Shoal, and in that's why we're planning to file a case against China for destroying the coral reefs. That's why we need a monitoring structure there to prevent China from destroying the coral reefs in Ayungin Shoal. So we have a right to be there because that is our EEZ, and the coastal state that has jurisdiction over the EEZ has the right to put up structures in its EEZ for the purpose of protecting and preserving the marine environment.
Justice, the Philippines has filed another diplomatic protest against China over its latest aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea against the Philippine Coast Guard, which brings the total to 125 diplomatic protests filed under the Marcos administration. So, sir, at this point, should we still be filing these if there is no assurance of withdrawal of China's presence in the disputed waters?
Yes, because legally, those protests in the form of note verbals are very important. Remember, in the arbitration at The Hague, the Chinese said, oh, we claimed that area and you did not protest. Because if another country claims your sovereign rights, your EEZ, and you do not protest, then you impliedly consent, you acquiesce to prevent implied consent and acquiescence from setting in. You have to make a formal protest. And all of these notes verbal are formal protests to prevent the other side from saying we have consented to their claim. So the tribunal said, oh, the Philippines had several notes verbal protesting these actions of China. So the Philippines did not concede that China's 9-dash line constitutes its national boundary in the South China Sea. So these are very important legal instruments to prevent us from waiving our rights. Because under international law, if that somebody claims your sovereignty or sovereign rights, you must protest. Because if you don't protest, you are deemed to have acquiesced. It has a very, very important value. I want to emphasize that. We must protest every time that there is an encroachment on our sovereignty or sovereign rights. There should be no question about this. No Filipino should say it doesn't matter. No, it matters a lot. And I want everyone to know that.
Repeating what you said, sir, no, it is very, very important that the Philippines keeps on filing these diplomatic protests every time there's an act of aggression by China in the West Philippine Sea, because not doing so would mean waiving our rights in the said waters. Tama po, ano?
Yes, that is very correct. We have to protest every time and announce it to the world.
Now, sir, going back to the permanent structure that is being pushed in the Senate right now, so they have started deliberation for the 2024 national budget for this structure. So you said earlier that it should be a civilian structure, ano? So right now, what we are, the aggressive actions of China is water cannoning, ano? So these are small boats by the Philippine Coast Guard. So I'm just gonna go straight to it, ano? So what happens if China attempts to attack that permanent structure that we will be building?
We will go to the arbitral tribunal and we will say China destroyed our civilian structure. The tribunal has jurisdiction. We will demand damages. And if we recover, let's say, $25 million as damages, we will deduct that from our loans from China. Remember, we borrowed for Kaliwa Dam and the Chico irrigation project. These are worth hundreds of or millions of dollars. So we can deduct that because there will be offsetting.
I see. I noticed, sir, so we shouldn't be putting up any military sort of like base in that shoal, correct? So it's basically a sandbank that it's not, that is slightly below.
Yes, I would prefer that we put up a civilian structure, because if it's civilian structure, we can complain to the tribunal. If it's military, we cannot, because the tribunal has no jurisdiction over military activities.
I understand. So they don't have jurisdiction over military activities. So if a military structure was built there and, for example, there was an attack or an form of intimidation, like I doubt if they're still going to use water cannoning, ano, against a permanent structure. So what happens then?
Well, if they use armed force, we can invoke the mutual defense treaty.
The mutual defense treaty with the United States.
Yes, and China knows that if they use armed force, we can invoke the mutual defense treaty. And the last thing that China wants is to give the U.S. a legal excuse to intervene. That's why they will never use armed force. That is why they're using only gray zone tactics below the level of armed force, so that we cannot invoke the mutual defense treaty. That's very clear. China can easily take out the BRP Sierra Madre through armed force, but they are not doing that because we can invoke the mutual defense treaty, and China doesn't want to give the U.S. a legal excuse to intervene in the South China Sea dispute.
I see, I understand. So I'm guessing China. So as you said, China is also being very careful about their actions.
Yes, they will not use armed force. They will continue to use water cannons, intimidation, but they will not use armed force. They will not fire their weapons.
I see. So both sides, both Philippines and the Chinese Coast Guard, and the China is both staying on the level of the Coast Guard, which you said is a civilian organization.
So yes, that's why we should let the Coast Guard take over Ayungin Shoal so that it becomes a civilian activity, not a military activity.
I see, sir. And also, in what you're saying, you are also not in favor of military action, or which would mean war between two countries.
Yeah, of course, nobody wants war. I mean, you're crazy to go to war. So we should we should follow the rule of law. Because if we follow the rule of law, we will win. Because we are very strong on the law. We have already the arbitral award. That means it's ours. Let's stay there. If you go to war, you don't know what will happen. That's beyond the jurisdiction of the arbitral tribunal already.
I see. So, of course, at all cost, wars should be avoided, especially in the disputed borders, because we already won basically the ruling, and it's just a matter of enforcing. So, sir, after this, so you're pro the mutual defense treaty with the United States as well.
Yes, of course, because that's why the Chinese are very careful not to attack our public vessels, because the US said any attack on a Philippine public vessel, that means Coast Guard or Navy or Philippine aircraft, would trigger the operation of the mutual defense treaty. That's why China does not attack, does not seize the BRP Sierra Madre, although it's practically defenseless.
I see. So, oo nga no, sir. I mean, it's a deteriorating ship, the RP Sierra Madre. So they
It cannot sail anymore.
wanted to. Mhm. They just wouldn't do that because that would invoke the mutual defense treaty that the Philippines
Yes,
has.
that's why we still carry the BRP Sierra Madre in our roster of active ships, so that it is a public vessel of the Philippine Navy.
So, repeating what you said, sir, you are very much in support of the permanent structure in the West Philippine Sea that is being pushed in the Senate, and I think it's getting a lot of support from the Senate as well. And more than that, we should keep filing these diplomatic protests against China every time there's an aggressive action to enforce our rights over our waters.
That is correct, but let me add, we should put up civilian structures.
Civilian structures operated by the Philippine Coast Guard and not the military.
Not the Navy. So that we can go to the arbitral tribunal, it will be under the jurisdiction of UNCLOS.
I see. So we're covered on all sides, no, sir?
Yes.
Right. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Yes, thank you so much, former Supreme Court Justice and a staunch defender of the West Philippine Sea, Senior Justice Antonio Carpio. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat also. Thank you.